علمنا ما ينفعنا علمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So, what is the general idea about these hadiths and quotes? Talking about girls singing a song, talking about entertainment, about yashtari lahu al-hadith, songs and things like that. What was the vain talk, etc. And then it was talking about um, what was it? Playing chess? Was it talking about chess? Yeah, chess and other things. What's the whole general idea, guys? The spirit from a spiritual point of view, and a kind of a life, like how to live life. What are the things? What are they talking about?
Last time we mentioned that all of these things are distractions ultimately, and that
Mm-hmm.
we should use our time to do that which truly matters, connect
Mm-hmm.
with our Lord.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else?
Can I ask, Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Works it out.
In regards to chess, music, um, and in some elements, they are allowed. So, we have people like
Right.
Rumi.
So Ibrahim, but in that, so give me so if we put the fiqh to the side, right? The technicalities. Why
Hmm.
would they be aware and why would they be okay? Like,
Why would they be aware?
yeah,
What, sorry?
yeah. Where and why would they be okay? What from what point of view?
If you're in doing spirituality, if you're doing it for the purpose of Allah or trying to, um, I think from your niyat, if your niyat is aligned with, your religion and your purpose in
Mhm.
life, then, it will reflect in your arts or within your culture, within everything that you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ibrahim, have you watched Reservoir Dogs?
I cannot remember. Yeah. But
Anybody
yeah.
watch Reservoir Dogs?
Yep.
Yeah. You know the scene when they're in the car and he's like, "Are you gonna be okay? Are you gonna be okay?" Remember that scene?
Yeah.
Like he's just been, yeah. So you just been shot, bro. Someone's just been shot and you're running for police. Why are you singing your song? Like, what's the point of his song? Like, what? He's like, "You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay." Like there's a little tune. Like, what was the point of it? Like, would you sing a song or play a game when you're being chased by the police and someone's like being shot in the stomach and dying? Unless it's part of this cure, right? He's helping the problem. So you see that it's not weird, right? So you see, there's people who are like, look, Judgment Day is coming to us in an extremely fast pace, right? Inna sa'ata atiyatun akadu ukhfiha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the hour is coming. I can hardly hold it back. Metaphorically, of course, but like it's almost like this beast that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, despite his power, can hardly hold back. So now you're like messing around, Habibi. Yeah, but I'm messing around for Judgment Day, right? I'm messing around for Judgment Day. If Judgment Day came, I wouldn't not mess around because this messing around is preparation for Judgment Day. So, as Sheikh Ibrahim mentioned, this song helps me remember Allah. This game helps me do this thing, right? It's not a waste of time. It's something I'm doing with Judgment Day in mind. If you went to Gaza, you wouldn't play soccer with some kids, you know? Imagine, for example, one of the kids in Gaza says, "Hey, can you just bring a computer game? Yeah, play a computer game. Play your heart out, right? You need it, right? So that action of yours that you're helping a kid play a game in Gaza, subhanallah, isn't that rahmah? Doesn't that apply to your own kids sometimes, right? Your son, for example, memorizes juz amma, like, yeah, 10, I give you non-stop screen time for 10 hours, like just play computer games, and you playing with him, right? So you're not celebrating because it's fun. You're celebrating Judgment Day, right? So Judgment Day celebration, a fun for Judgment. So your mind is on Judgment Day, as opposed to somebody who's weird, right? Somebody who's super weird, right? So again, a Reservoir Dogs, Yusuf, right? you know the fires. Well, he doesn't actually set him on fire, but you know the guy with the he was like torturing that guy.
Oh yeah.
So you know, he's
Cut
like
his-
got a song in the background. It's like you're weird, right? That's so weird, right? It's almost just like you know, and it's like it's like so now imagine for example like there's a fire, okay? We're in a building. There's a fire. We have to get out, and Yusuf Mohsin is like singing some dumb song. I'm like, bro, shut up. Like, we're trying to get out of this fire. Like, where is your head, bro? You know, just stop singing this song. He's weird. He's not in keeping with the flow of what's happening. There's a car crash. There's a fire in a building. So this is the mentality of the Sahaba. Like, there is a fire. Get out now. Run. And you're like, da-na-na-na-na, playing some kind of Fruit Loop game, whatever it is on your phone. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I hear the
You,
song
you,
in my head now.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah protect me. May Allah protect you from my evil, Yusuf. Right?
Okay.
It's a song right stuck in the middle with you, right?
Yeah,
But it's
stuck in
actually
the
quite
middle.
important. If you think about it in terms of marriage, it's actually very important, right? Just me and you, right? It's just me and you. We got to work this out somehow, right? But yeah, it's a totally different Batil song. But the point is, that guy's weird and sadistic, you know? So just a tune, right? Or something else. Again, what's it called? Music as blocking something out in what's it called again? Apocalypse Now, right?
Mm.
We spoke about this last week. So you have this tune in the background, you're just blocking reality out, right? You're using music to block reality, right? Actually a perversion of reality. It's not good. So often in music is like that's just you know. So the tune, the game, what you're doing is not in keeping with reality as opposed to a game, a process, an activity that is in keeping with reality. You are dying right now. Every single one of us, we're in ICU. It's the same. There's no difference. It's not like that person's on the verge of death and we're not. We're all on the verge of death. كل نفس ذائقة الموت. What does that mean? Does it mean سوف تذوق الموت? It doesn't say every single soul will one day taste death. It is tasting death. ذائقة means now. It means now. So every single one of us, we were born with a pill in our mouth, which is called death. And it's just there in the back of your throat, and one day you're going to swallow it, today or tomorrow. So you were born dying. Every single soul is dying. So you're dying. As you are dying, you're doing this game. You know what I'm saying? So that's the muntalaq, that's the place, that's the mindset where all these games come from. And so the whole general idea is, what are you doing? You're just distracting yourself from your thing. But if the distraction is not a distraction and it's coming from that thing or it leads to that big goal, then it's a different thing in general. Okay? That's the general picture. Does it make sense, guys?
Yes.
Right? So this concept of desperation, right? But very, very important concept of desperation. Okay, so we've got that idea. And then specifically on the fiqh point of view, what did we say about chess last week from a fiqh point of view? What's the majority opinion on chess?
So, Sheikh, that's why I was asking in particular because
Yeah,
I do play chess and I know that my niyyah is to help my brain to try to be strategic in the way that it moves and the way that it thinks.
yeah,
And I'm sure that the history I'm not too sure, but I've heard some different narrations of that it was an Islamic born game. And it's kind of similar to um,
yeah. So I
the
wouldn't say
stars
Islamic. I would
and
say
we know that
Muslims.
the moon has an effect on the human being, but
Yeah,
astrology per se was
yeah,
made to be haram because some of the people started to believe that the stars
yeah.
had more
Correct,
of an
correct.
impact
Yeah,
than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, astaghfirullah. But
yeah,
we know that Islamically that we do know that the planets do have effects on the human being.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
But they
so so
made it
Sheikh, yeah.
haram because of
So Sheikh
people's
Ibrahim.
understanding of what this thing is. So I just believe that at times it you know, these types of things, if it becomes a problem for the mass society, then the ruling is that certain things will become haram. But if there is a way to make that niyat become aligned with Allah, then it can become halal, I think. If you
Okay.
understand what I'm saying.
I understand exactly what you're saying, yeah. So just two things, Sheikh Ibrahim, in terms of fiqh, okay? So we have to understand that there's a difference between obviously Muslims and Islam. Obviously, we know there's a difference in the two things, but just historically, there's many things Muslims did, right? You go back in the culture like, oh, but they all do this, but it doesn't make it halal, you know? So for example, like music, right? You know, I have my book of Ibn Battuta's traveling, and on the front cover is trumpets. Like everywhere he goes in the Muslim world, this is, 700 years ago, everywhere he goes, there's music, you know? So Muslims studied music, played music, did all these things, okay? The fuqaha don't really care what Muslims do, you know? So did Muslims play chess? Yes. Did Muslims get involved in lots of things? They did lots of things, okay? So, but and particularly because the Muslims also they were a superpower, and so they got involved in luxury, and so there's lots of games they played, lots of you're going to go in like cookbooks, medieval Arab world, like amazing, crazy food that we probably couldn't cook today, technology as well that we probably couldn't do, right? There's all these kind of things are kind of amazing. So there's one thing is like how culturally diverse and advanced the Muslim world was versus how aligned it was with Islam. That's number one. They're not necessarily the same. That's number one. Number two, the fuqaha by default, right? The fuqaha by default, they're going to say this is not in that category. I know what you mean, like something it's neutral and it can become good or bad depending on what you're doing, right? But the default, the fuqaha don't say that, right? The fuqaha, they would say by default, yeah, whatever Muslims played it, they didn't play it, they don't really care. What they're interested in is that basically majority of the Salaf were really, really against it. And they say not because of something accidental to it, but because of something innate in it. So the majority of scholars, they say it's actually sinful. You can't do it, right? You actually can't play chess at all. And the Shafi'is, they say it's not haram, it's makruh, right? So the way I would play it with chess is I would look at it as, let's say for kids, okay? So here's a kid, for example, and he's playing 6 hours a day on the screen, So I'm gonna be like, okay, give me an alternative. SubhanAllah, like we really don't realize how much work kids take. Yesterday, SubhanAllah, I came back, I just took my car to the mechanics. I came back with some free tires. Okay, just asked the mechanics, are you getting rid of these tires? I said, yeah, I just took them home. Okay, and I made this little exercise thing for my son outside. And you know what he said? He didn't say thank you. He said, I forgive you. And I was like, wow, that really hit. Not that it's rude, but like he really like kids really need time. Like they really really need time. Like you have to put in a lot of work for kids, right? Full time, more than full time job. So you have a kid and like, hey, I'm doing X. I'm like, well, do Y because Y is better. So is chess better than being on a screen 100%? I prefer to do the makruh of playing chess than to be on a screen because a screen that has multiple problems. Like there's I don't know what's going on, but it's problematic. You're trying to get your kid off the screen or trying to have less screen time, or even just you and him. It's like sometimes you just got to find things that they like. You got a teenage kid and it's like whatever, dad. Like you kind of messed up, and it's hard, right? So using it in that way, maybe, but the default, it's really on the edge. It's haram/makruh. Does that make sense, Ibrahim?
That's it.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to know why and how it became haram, and just in general, like when
Yes,
the
so what you just generally find is like so many of the Salaf, there's hadith that kind of could be interpreted one way or the other, but just so many of the Salaf were just really, really against it. So that's the basic. So they look at it as like, yeah, there must be something with it in itself, as opposed to, oh, if it leads to this, if it leads to that. So the same thing with music, right? Majority of scholars, if you asked, anybody saying the Shafi school, Maliki school, Hanbali school, Hanafi school, are musical instruments halal? They say no, they're not. You can't play musical instruments. You can't do it. Period. End of story. For a benefit or no benefit, you can't. You can't listen to it. You can't play it. End of story. That's the default thing. You will find voices here and there within the madhahib that will say no. If it's like poetry. If it's good, it's good. It's bad, it's bad. You hear voices like that, or if it's for, for spiritual reasons, as I mentioned before, a lot last week, etc. But that's not the general picture, right? Now, historically, was music everywhere? Yes, right? It's everywhere. So if you like historically in the Muslim world, yes, music was everywhere. You go from China to Spain, Muslims and music everywhere. Every Muslim culture has music. It's not a thing that didn't exist, you know? It's not true to say that every single Muslim culture had their own alcohol, is it? Right? That's not true. There are, by default, Islam and alcohol don't go together, right? But it is true to say historically that Muslims played music everywhere, right? So, but the issue is what Muslims did, right? And what is right or wrong is actually quite different. There's like a huge gap in reality. One of these things is, yeah. So when you look at history, it's useful to look at history, but it's also quite concerning sometimes. You're like, whoa, that was pretty bad. Like, I remember one of my teachers and friends. He said, talking about homosexuality and these kind of things. He said, "So did you realize that the Ottomans legalized homosexuality in 1750?" I was like, what? Right? And you go back to like Ottoman Turkey, and there's lots of amazing things in Ottoman Turkey, ulama, and amazing, amazing spiritual things. There's also lots of really weird things in Ottoman Turkey, you know, like boys dressed up as women, and nightclubs where you go and there's like boys who are dancing on stage dressed up as women, and brothels and alcohol, and like, whoa. So you're like, if you were in Europe back in the 1700s, 1800s, 19, if you want to party, you're going to go to the east. That's what you're going to do. That's what you're going to do. So you're gay, you're gonna go to the east. You want to sleep with like 50,000, a brothel, whatever you're going to find. It's just way easier to do the haram in the east, right? Weed, right? So many people like, yeah, what do you call it in Urdu? Charas or something like that? What's it called? And there's a word for weed. I can't remember what it is. Like my mum was like, she became Muslim. She was like, yeah, everybody smokes weed everywhere. All Muslims smoke weed. It's like normal. Charas, right? So it's like, so my point is I remember telling my French teacher about music, and she was like confused, like how can it be haram in Islam? Because she said, I've traveled the Muslim world and every Muslim place has music, right? So what I'm trying to say is history and culture is important. It's not unimportant. You can't come along and say it's not unimportant. That's wrong, and it does affect fiqh, and it is important to see the things, but there is a huge gap between what Muslims should have been doing, and what Muslims should do, and what they have done in the past, and what they did do. Right? There's quite a big gap, right? Does that make sense, guys? So, the Salafi approach of like anti-culture, like to heck with culture, we don't care about what anybody does. This is Quran and Sunnah in your face. To some extent, there's truth in it. To some extent, that is false, right? Like if you look at traditional scholars, they will, as much as they can, try and fit with culture if there's valid interpretations. But there's times where it's like, yeah, it's just wrong. They call it urf fasid, a widespread thing that's just wrong. It's just wrong, and that's about it. You know. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, okay. But is a difference of agreement a difference of agreement, right? Can we be, you know, someone comes to ask a question, Sheikh Farid Dingle, I'm asking you as a spokesman of the Islamic tradition, does the Islamic tradition categorically forbid musical instruments, playing and listening? Yes or no? The answer is no. Okay. So you can't lie. You can't lie and say the majority of scholars allow music. That's not true, because the majority of scholars do not allow musical instruments. But you also can't lie and say it's categorical, can you? You know what I'm saying? You can't do that. So, um, and you can't lie and say it has no benefit. And you can't lie and say that people haven't used it for benefit. And you can't lie and say it hasn't been part of of religious Muslim lives, right? Historically, music, qawwali, for example, in Pakistan, India, it's like as a part of religious Muslim lives. It's not something that's external. The military band of the Ottomans and various different things. You can't come along and say, oh, these were all fusaq. These were all people like who were just like, you can't say that, right? So you have to have a balanced answer, but it has to be accurate, right? It has to historically accurate, academically accurate, right? Um, and where there's scope, where there's no scope, there's no scope. Okay, khair. So now we're on to totally new topic because it kind of seems like we're coming to close to the end of the book. So everyone's good with that, with those points there? So what about beatbox then? Where does beatbox fit in? And another question, what's it called? Break dancing with no women and no music, right? People do break dancing in the street, right? Men clapping, right? Men singing and clapping, right? Where would that fit in? Yeah. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to say, is dancing itself halal? So yeah, is singing itself halal? It's okay. Now we can say, is it distracting you, or is it something okay? So yeah, so it's okay. But there's also type of dancing, certain moves that would be a bit weird, right? They're not appropriate for a man to do or a woman, right? Some of those things, but otherwise, be like, yeah, that's permissible in itself, but it could lead to something else. Beatboxing, same thing. Beatboxing is a human voice, right? But look, listen to this, okay? So now I get this beatboxing thing and I copy a song that has bad content. Obviously, it's going to be haram, right? Or it's connected, right? So, like I know somebody who listens to beatboxing, okay, and they're listening to beatboxing, which sounds like drum and bass. Does anyone know what drum and bass is? Yeah, drum and bass. All right, yeah. Bakr, you know drum and bass? No.
Like just the sounds, right?
It's a type of music called drum and bass, right? I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe it doesn't exist in America. I'm not sure. Okay. Anyway, so you know what I did? I said, look. So in itself, it's like there's a person using their mouth to make sounds, right? You can't, from a fiqh point of view, that's halal, right? But drum and bass, right? Ibrahim, are you here? You left, right? If you know what drum and bass is, that's the kind of like you hear this thing, it's like that's off, right? So forgive me, guys. I might be like I'm too old for half of you. Yusuf, you're the same age as me, right? Well, no, I'm not too old. Uh, But anyway, so basically, what I had him do, I said, look, I said, this is drum and bass. So basically, this person's just hearing this thing or like getting into this, okay, a cappella kind of thing. I was like, you need to know the soul of that a cappella, you know? You need to know the soul of it. So I said, look, here's what was it? The Prodigy. You guys have heard of the Prodigy? Again, forgive me, I'm too old, right? So that's like drum and bass, right? So there's a song Prodigy called Firestarter, right? And I can't remember this guy, like super weird satanic guy. So you're singing this song, or listening to this song, which is technically halal, meaning it's just a man making sounds with his lips. Okay, technically halal. But where does it come from? The world of drum and bass is a world of drugs. Like I was at school, lots of people took drugs, and like drum and bass is like a drug kind of music, right? That's a kind of a drug world, right? Or a world of like very weird kind of people. Like it's not like, so no worries, right? Um, so like there's an issue where like, okay, it's technically halal, but where is it the world of that thing coming from? You know what I'm saying? So that's also kind of these things. It doesn't really change it immediately into haram, but it's important that people say like, oh, things on the edge, like what is the world that it is coming from, right? You guys follow me?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now new topic. So it says Babul Hadi wa Samt al-Hasan. Good habits and good manners. حدثنا عبد الله بن الأسود قال حدثنا عبد الواحد بن زياد قال حدثنا الحارث بن حصير عفوا قال حدثنا زيد بن وهب قال سمعت ابن مسعود يقول إنكم في زمان كثير فقهاؤه قليل خطباؤه قليل سؤاله كثير معطوه والعمل فيه فقائد للهوى وسيأتي آه من بعدكم زمان قليل فقهاؤه كثير خطباؤه كثير سؤاله قليل معطوه الهوى فيه قائد للعمل اعلموا أن حسن الهدي في آخر الزمان خير من بعض العمل. Go ahead, Fakhri, can you read for us?
Yeah. Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu said, "You are in a time when there are many jurists and few sermonizers, few who ask questions and many who can give the answers. In these
Mhm.
times, deed
Right. So
is the need."
what does that mean? Many jurists. What does that mean? What's a
Like fiqh,
jurist? Yeah, somebody who knows fiqh, right? You know the details, and you know the goals of the Sharia, and you know the details of the Sharia. What's the Sharia trying to do, and what are the rules, right? You know what I'm saying? So like, oh, how does this thing actually work? Okay, you know, a time when there are many jurists and few sermonizers. What's a sermonizer,
uh, like giving the sermons.
right? Like YouTube, like influencers, YouTube influencers, right? So you can imagine you're online and you're on YouTube, like what do we actually listen to? It's just sermons. Like people talking about general things. Do they talk about fiqh, like details of halal and haram? Do they talk about how to interpret like the actual science, usul al-fiqh, for example, the science of is there anything technical? No, it's just like edutainment, right? Religious edutainment. So it says you're in a time when where there's many people who know the rules of Islam and know how Islam works. And there are very few people who are doing Islamic edutainment. There are few questions. People aren't asking questions. But in spite of that, there are many people who could give them answers, right? There's no, like, we all know what we're doing. It's clear and it's fine. In these times, deed is the leader, while sensual desires is dependent. It's not really like that. That's not really a good translation. So he says here, he says, العمل فيه قائد للهوى, right? The deeds lead and control desires or lead wants, right? So people are doing and they're not just fancy thinking about stuff. People are, yeah, how to explain it? Like basically their deeds speak louder than their words. That's what you can say. Their deeds speak louder than their words. Okay, and then he says, uh, okay, and then he says, a time will come.
A time will come after you when the jurists will be few and the sermonizers many. Those who
So
ask
lots of
questions,
people who can come and give a khutbah, epic khutbah. Does he know fiqh? Does he know the details of how the deen works on a fundamental level? No. He says this hadith is sahih. So what does sahih actually mean? What does that actually mean? He says, oh, the Prophet ﷺ said it. You don't actually understand what you're talking about. So there'll be countless people who stand on minbar and say the hadith is sahih. The Prophet ﷺ said, but they don't know what you mean by sahih. So they don't actually know what they are talking about. They don't understand how the deen actually works. So they don't have fiqh fi deen, right? So there'll be many people, a lot of talkers, and a few people who know anything. A lot of influencers, a lot of edutainment, right? Like I see with my own classes, ladies and gentlemen, right? My serious classes, nobody attends, right? Arguably because they're not on that level, okay? Right? So the issue of getting to level. But few people get to that level, right? There's classes that get cancelled because like nobody's, you know, people which want edutainment, right? That's what they want. It's got to look good. Somebody contacted me the other day. They said, "Look, Fareed, you should put your video on." Honestly, why? Because the video is more entertaining, right? Is it not? Like, what do you think, guys? Do you think I'd have more students if I use my video or not? Yeah. If I had a video, I'd have more students, right? Maybe. If I on social media, I don't know if anybody follows me on social media. If I did videos, right, I'd probably get more people watching, right? Because it's more interesting, right? Because it's more entertaining. Whereas I'm trying my best to not do that. I don't want you to see me or to see my style or to see the way I gesticulate or the way I express something. I want you to see the message. I am a conduit. You are there and you're saying, Shh, Fareed, give me the dean. So here's the dean. Here's the dean. I'm just dispensing. You're not here to look at the dispenser. You're there to look at what is dispensed, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So we shouldn't dress like you. Yeah. Right. Jalaluddin Rumi said that. He said, "Don't look at me, but take what is in my hand." Right. So the other day, I'm just, so this is very common, right? This is very common. So we are looking at the medium, like how is it being presented? What does a person sound like? He's like this and like that, but not the message, right? So I'll give you an example, guys, and I'm not discrediting him at all. I love his message. Sheikh Abdullah Uduro, right? You guys know him?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Why would a man listen to him?
His videos are like there's quality put into it.
Okay. How does he look?
Yeah, I feel like he would resemble
Presentable.
what people want to achieve.
Why? How does he look physically?
He's like very muscular, mashallah. He's very well
Exactly.
built.
Okay. So you could imagine it's like I'm looking at it from a material. I'm not astaghfirullah. I'm not saying he's insincere. I'm not saying he's a show off. I'm not saying anything wrong at all. But I'm just saying it from a material, physical point of view, the image looks pleasing, right? What about women? Why would women listen to him?
Same reason.
Same reason, right? So if you took away, if you didn't know what he looked like Abdullah Masood, we don't know what he looks like, right? So we're benefiting from Abdullah Masood, we don't know what it looks like, right? So if you took away many of these things, you took away the medium or you took away the image, suddenly it's not the same, right? So this is what we're talking about, guys. This is what we're talking about. It's like he said there's a time when in our time, he's like, we're talking about the message and people who understand the message. He says there will come a time when it will all be how things look, the style of the khutbah, the presentation, the this, the that, right? And that's all it is, right? I know even with myself, I told the kids at school, I said, you know why I'm teaching you? They're like, why? It's because I'm white. And I'm basically I'm teaching kids of parents who have an insecurity problem. So when they see a white person teaching the deen, it helps them. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, oh, it's not really true. It's like, yeah, it is true. Right? So that's the medium. You know what I'm saying? The medium is more important than the message, right? And Abdullah Masoud is saying there's a time where you're going to have lots of people who they're really good speakers, they're this, that, but they don't actually have fiqh. The content is not there. Go ahead, Sheikh Ubaid.
So I'm just wondering, like, how do we convey the real message effectively in a world that cares mostly about aesthetics?
So you try your best, right? So let's look at like Habib. Let's look at two contrast two people, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and his Sheikh Murabat al-Hajj. So Sheikh Murabat al-Hajj is in the middle of the desert in a place where there's no AC. in the place where there's no flowing water, as far as I know. Um, there's no, it's like really bad. The medium is really, really bad. The way you study with that sheikh is extremely unentertaining and tiresome and tedious. You sit there with a 10-minute class, he reads something to you, explains it to you, and you got to memorize it and come back tomorrow and repeat it and just work on that, right? Really, really hard, right? Sheikh Hamza Yusuf himself, right? Obviously, mashallah, he's an alim, he's a scholar. We consider him, of the righteous slaves of Allah, inshallah ta'ala. But his medium, he's a good speaker, handsome guy, can speak well, he can articulate things. The medium is really important. So I don't think with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf that you say that I think with him, it's the medium, his fame has come from his medium more than his message. You know what I'm saying? So if there was no image of him, nobody saw nobody knew what it looked like. And nobody heard his voice, they just read his books. It wouldn't be the same. Whereas Imam Shafi'i, don't know what he looks like. But I read his books. Imam Ghazali, read his books. Right, the message, right? So we have a problem, Ubayd, right? Particularly with youth, particularly with less religious people. You can't just say read this book or go and study with that sheikh in some other country, right? You have to use the medium to some extent, right? With the youth and these kind of things, you have to make things fun. You have to do these things, but it's a problem, right? Like I know in my own world, the more I bring me into the lesson, right? I bring in my ducks into the lesson. My rabbit, Goldilocks, she just gave birth a lot yesterday. I bring that in. Things that my kids are doing. The more I bring me into it, the more I dilute the message. Does that make sense? And it becomes edutainment. And I get people listening, and there may be I might affect more people in some way, but I'm also diluting the message. Does it make sense? You follow me?
Right.
Same thing with gender interaction, right? Gender interaction. Like when I go to the States, we're like, no, I only teach in a place where there's no women. So like, okay, great. Like, what about this? What about this? What about this? Like, yeah. So like, I actually don't teach in 90% of places. I won't go give a talk, right? Why? Because my message to people is, if you're heterosexual, this is a fitna. So then I've changed the message, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if I go and stand in front of a bunch of sisters and talk to them, and they're like, "Oh, Sheikh Fareed, really, really been inspired by your talks." Da, 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 da. I've actually just changed the message. That's the reality. So I'm like, you just told me that this is a fitna for most people, and everyone's like, "Yeah, yeah, I get it." And you just like, I try and do this reality check with gender interaction with people, and then you just changed it by saying, "Oh, because of the need to give da'wah, I'm just going to do this." Like, okay, but you've changed the message, right?
Yeah.
So, to what extent are you willing to do that? Right? Are you going to change the message? What did the Quraysh say to the Prophet ﷺ? Say, look, we accept you, but we're going to have to do it like this. We're going to worship your God one year and you worship ours another year, right? You got to compromise. He's like, no, I'm not going to compromise. Right? So, you got to be careful, right? And some people compromise more than they should. Wallahu alam. They compromise more than they should. Okay? And some people don't compromise enough, right? Maybe I'm uncompromising, maybe. Allahu Akbar. But I'm just trying to say. It makes sense, guys? But the point is the message. Sayyidina Abdullah Mas'ud, 1,400 years ago, he's already seeing this. He says there's a time of people who understand the deen and then people who just talk. Lots of talkers, right? The medium is really interesting. It's funny, it's entertaining, right? But there's no, the content is not there in reality. Does that make sense? So this is one of the problems again with why I have to read, right? Because when you think with just the medium of reading is content heavy, medium, low, right? So that's really important. So then when you find out I don't read books, I just watch YouTube videos, right? It's a problem, right? It's a huge problem because it means you're like can't even process information unless it's entertaining. Okay, those who ask questions will be larger numbers, and those who answer few. Desires will reign supreme while deeds will be subjugated to desires. Right? Know that in the last days, go ahead, Fakhri.
Know that in the last days, good matters will be better than some deeds because they cover much goodness and benefit other people too, while deed
Mhm.
is an individual affair, which benefits
Exactly.
only the.
So what that means then, basically, like in the end, like, Akhir Zaman is like just good character will be a huge thing, right? So like, oh, does he pray a lot? It's like, yeah, it's not super important, right? That's not super important. Does he do this? He's memorized the whole Quran. It's like, no, but like, when he parks his car too close to yours and you say, bro, do you mind moving it? He moves, right? And there's no fuss and there's no resentment and there's no argument. Just people who are easy to deal with, right? Right. So he's talking about this basically mass perversion of the religion that's going to happen. And to an extent, we even see it in fiqh. The discussions that come up in fiqh are a result of the perversion of the religion, right? I mentioned to many of you before, like when we're talking, we're talking about wudu. We have this debate: do you have to have a niyyah or not? So, like, you can imagine sitting with the Sahaba and saying, "Do I have to intend wudu when making wudu?" And they're like, "Well, what else would you do?" You know? Why? Because for them, wudu was this a chance to save yourself from the hellfire, right? To save yourself from the hellfire. They saw it as this deep cleansing experience. It was deeply emotional for them. We're like, oh, do I have to intend? They're like, I don't know. How could you not intend? You know? And now you have this debate. Do you have to have intention? Do you have to intention? When intention? Whether it's like it's just all really weird, right? Because they just wouldn't even think about that question, right? I'm not trying to say that it's wrong that we answer it. I'm just saying that it's indicative of like you're just weird people. Why would you even ask that question, right? No one's going to ask, do you have to intend? You know, I don't know. Just odd. Okay, Bismillah. Next hadith it says, Haddathana. So we have to, so again, how do we reverse this? Sohbat al-awliya. How do we reverse this? By keeping the company of people of the akhirah. Physically keeping the company of the people of the akhirah, right? Sheikh Yusuf, how long was your brother, Sheikh Omar, how long was he in Tarim for?
About 7 years.
7 years. Did you notice the difference? I mean, obviously,
Well,
somebody gets older there when they're in 7 years, people change. But did you notice the difference?
I mean,
Exactly, right? Obviously, so right. So then it's like, Habibi, this is your life. You only have one life, you know? And it's
mm,
like the difference of being with so he's the same person now. He's in corporate America, right? Right now. Like he does a 9 to 5 like everyone else, right?
yeah.
But he does it in a different way,
Mm,
right? It's different.
mm.
So
صحيح.
Janet on the other side of the office is in the dunya. He's not in the dunya. I don't know your brother, but I don't think he's in the dunya when he's in the office. I don't believe it.
Mm,
You know?
no.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you to reset things, right? It's very important, right?
Mm,
So you getting an idea of people, being with good people, changing the way you are, and you can be with good people in your own country as well, right? Free Dingle again. I was in Hereford, in the middle of nowhere, no Muslim, basically no Muslims. Birmingham is an amazing place, right? You go to Birmingham right now, it's like it's like tons of majalis and tons of righteous people and tons of these like wow, right? There's a lot of bad things there, but there's a lot of good, right? So in a country as well, in a neighborhood, you can change, you can choose where you are and what you do. And you can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give me suhbat al-salihin, right? Give me people who are, you know, uh, people who are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you will find them, right? And so it's very important. This is like, and it's just like an understanding that you couldn't have got otherwise. An understanding of life that you couldn't have got otherwise. اوكي حدثنا محمد بن سلام قال اخبرنا خالد بن عبد الله عن الجريري عن ابي الطفيل قال قلت لابي الطفيل رايت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال نعم ولا اعلم على ظهر الارض رجلا حيا راى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم غيره قال قال كان أبيض مليح الوجه. وعن يزيد بن هارون عن الجريري قال كنت أنا وأبو الطفيل عامر بن نطوف بالبيت. قال أبو الطفيل ما بقي أحد رأى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم غيري. قلت ورأيته؟ قال نعم. قلت كيف كان؟ قال كان أبيض مليحا مقصدا. Yeah. Uh, yes, we've combined two quotes here. Go ahead, Fakhri.
It is stated by Jurayri that he asked Abu al-Tufail radiallahu anhu that did you see the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He said, yes, and I do not know of anyone alive on earth today who might have seen him. He added, he was fair complexioned with beautiful features. Jurayri, do I continue?
Bismillah, yeah.
Jurayri is reported through another line of transmission to have said, I and Abu Tufail radiallahu anh were circumambulating the Kaaba. He said to me that there was no one else alive whom I have seen the Prophet ﷺ, and I asked him if he had seen the Prophet ﷺ. He confirmed that he had. I asked him to describe his features, and he said that the Prophet ﷺ was fair in color, beautiful looking, and of medium height.
So I'm not quite sure how it's related here, but he says kana abyad, right? He was white. So when an Arab says white, they don't mean what I mean by white. Okay? So if you ask me, for example, is a Spanish person white? Say no, right? So we label Spanish based on their religion, right? In England, we're historically Protestant and they're historically Catholic. So there's this kind of like issue between us, right? So what they so like me, I'm red, right? So I'm not white. I'm what they would call ahmar, red, right? So whereas the Prophet ﷺ was white, meaning he is Middle Eastern, like you could call it olive skin, right? Olive skin, right? That's like olive skin as opposed to pale, right? So like I'm like pale, like red, you know? Like I can do a smiley on my, oh, that's something else to my circulation, but you know, like my ears go red, you know, like you know what I mean, right? Like a redneck, right? Like, oh, you can see, you could like it's very different as opposed to someone who is olive skinned, right? Okay, so I'm not sure how that's relevant there. I'm not sure where that fits in. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, so it says حدثنا فروة قال حدثنا عبيدة ابن حميد عن قابوس عن أبيه عن ابن مسعود عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الهدي الصالح والسمت الصالح والاقتصاد جزء من خمسة وعشرين جزءا من النبوة. Go ahead.
Sayyidina Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh has reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, adopting character, good habits, and moderation in spending is one portion of the 25 portions of prophethood.
So you're 4%. You are somebody who has a good demeanor, nice character. You don't argue. People complain to you, you say, I'm sorry. You're not like overly defensive. You accommodate, you overlook, right? Wal-iqtisad, and being balanced, right? You are somebody, you are you are at least, you are 4% profit, right? As opposed to somebody who does not have good character and is not balanced. Very, very un-Islamic, right? Very, very un-Islamic. And, you know, so mashallah, he's a hafiz, but it's like super hard to deal with him. Mashallah, she's a niqabi, but it's like, wow, ooh, that was hard, right? Like dealing with her is like, it's hard. Like it's a real, like, you don't, people want to avoid her, right? And Dhunnun al-Misri has asked this question. He said, who has the hardest life? And he said, people with bad character. And he says, what is the sign of bad character? He says, كثرة الاختلاف or كثرة المخالفة. It's always arguing with everybody, right? So it's everyone else's fault, not yours. So, well, you have beef with so-and-so and you have beef with so-and-so, an argument with so-and-so and disagreement with so-and-so. You are probably the problem. You are probably the problem, right? And this is again why marriage is so important, right? I'm sure Fakhri, for example, has very good akhlaq. I'm sure if you go and ask, his friends at school, his teachers, his parents, like this is a guy, nice guy, right? He's a nice guy, good guy, easy to deal with. But when Fakhri gets married, inshallah, next Friday, Ya Rab, it's a different ball game because now you're dealing with something that is very, very sensitive, and the emotional investment in marriage is extremely high, and so suddenly you see other sides of Fakhri, and Fakhri sees other sides about himself. And then you go and ask his wife, you say, does Fakhri have good character? She'd be like, oh, he's a work in progress. You know what I'm saying? So that's why marriage is so important, because it exposes your bad character. It's very, very important. And it shows you a cancer that would not come up on a normal radar, on a normal test, right? So it's very, very important, right? For those, to get married and to stay married. To get married and stay married. You can get married and have bad character and leave the marriage pretty quickly, yeah. It's quite not that difficult. Anybody can get pregnant or impregnate somebody. That's not a character achievement, is it? Right? It's not a character achievement. But achievement is I can go through the rough and smooth with somebody else in my life who does not make sense to me and who I don't understand and they don't understand me. And despite all of those things, we show good character and we're cool, calm, collected, and not judgmental and understanding and helpful. And the person finds comfort in us. And it's not, you ask the person, are they trying their best? So yeah, honestly, they're trying their best. They're a good person, they're trying their best, they're trying to change, as opposed to this person's just stubborn, annoying, arrogant, selfish, stuck up, etc. May Allah forgive us all. Right? Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.